Welcome back to Mystara for one of the bigger topics I've ever talked about, and I mean that quite literally. This week's topic is the Megafauna of Mystara. Technically, I know that Megafauna is animals over a certain weight limit. Humans can be considered Megafauna, but I'm specifically talking about the pre-Ice Age Megafauna that are now long extinct. Because those things are as cool as it gets, and the designers of the Mystara monster guides love them so much they included many of them in the creature catalogs. So what are they? Where do they live? And can I ride one? I'm Mr. Welch, and it's time to go big or go home. One problem you're going to encounter reading about Megafauna is that many of the names are only scientific names. If you want to introduce your players to a spiny anteater the size of a sheep, you are talking about the Zaglosis hacketi, which is not exactly an awe-inspiring name. And a fair warning, my Latin is largely limited to nemo mi impune lacessit, so if I pronounce any of these things wrong, deal with it. For many of the Megafauna, just make up a local name for a creature so you don't sound like you're reading the name from a science journal that you obviously stole the name from. Nobody calls the family pet Canis domesticus. It's a dog. So in case of the Hacketi, if you really want your players to come across one, you can just call it the giant echidna. Or since it's Australian, just call it the spiky crikey. And remember that since it is an Australian creature, that it has a poison attack that is found in all Australian creatures, especially the Canberrans. The Megafauna presented in the book are the Balacatherium, a large rhino-like creature. There's the Grangeri, which is a smaller version, but it's still related. The Hyenodon is pretty much a dire hyena. The Megatherium is better known as the ground sloth, and it's 2 stories tall. The Phororhacus has been in every edition of D&D, and it's the stock giant murder bird. Then you've got the well-known woolly rhino, the mammoth, and the mastodon, as well as the saber-toothed tiger for Ice Age-era creatures. Rounding out the list was the Titanothere, which was best described as rhinos with different horn upgrades. But why stop there? There's numerous other animals you can easily add both to attack the players with or give them a sense of wonder. Throw in the Glyptodon, a Volkswagen-sized armadillo. The Platybelodon was a big-lipped early elephant that gobbled up swamp plants. The Daeodon is best known as the Hell Pig, a 6-foot-tall, omnivorous, unstoppable killing machine. The Argentavis was a scavenger bird with a 24-foot wingspan that could stay aloft indefinitely using thermal waves. The Elasmotherium was a much larger cousin of the rhino with a horn you could joust with. Civatherium giganteum was a giant horned giraffe. The Megacamelus was exactly what it sounds like, a camel the size of an elephant. The Diprotodon was a giant wombat, hunted with glee by the Tasmanian lion. Lastly, the party will love to try and saddle break an Equus gigantus, a 7-foot-tall horse that will more likely saddle break them. That's 20 examples of Megafauna, but how do you use them in Mystara? The obvious answer is just cannon fodder. You kick on the door and face a 6-foot-tall angry pig. Threatening, sure, but not exactly original. You need to find homes for these creatures. If you stick to the Lost World theme, then you've got a host of locations to put them in. The Hollow World or Isle of Dread stand out immediately. But if you want to find them homes on the surface, then you've got work to do. Some of them are easy enough. Take all the woolly ones and stick them in Upper Norworld. The Platybelodon is right at home in Malfeggy Swamp. You'll need to stick the ones that came from the same stock as African animals in areas with similar terrain, which probably means getting an expedition to Scothar ready. If you want to encounter Glyptodons, head to the Savage Coast. Australian Megafauna are going to be found in the Wallaroo lands on the Orcs Head Peninsula. The appeal of Megafauna is that they resemble creatures we know, but with an alien twist. They're too large. Parts of their anatomy are just slightly different, or they pack on heavy fur that you wouldn't think of on modern animals. It's like slightly adjusting an existing monster to surprise characters with, but the work is already done for you. The key is describing the creatures to your players. A giraffe with antlers loses its charm if that's exactly how you describe it, but if the players are hiding in a tree and then a Civatherium starts eating the leaves, they won't know what they're looking at, or even if it's hostile. Sell up the alien nature of the Megafauna, how they are just slightly different, but that difference can unnerve a party. A rhino is a rhino. When the rhino has its horn replaced by what's best described as the business end of a crowbar, you have the party's full attention. Now, this video is about the Megafauna of Mystara, so how do you incorporate them into the setting? First off, remember, huge animals are typically not found near cities. You aren't going to have hell pigs rampaging around Darrigan City. They'd be hunted down as a public menace immediately. Fortunately for Mystara, we've got a lot of places to hide these creatures. A few of them are even mentioned in various books. Where there are Rhacasta, there's Smilodons. The Ice Age versions of the creatures are going to be found in tundra environments, as I've mentioned previously. Glyptodons are armadillos. Armadillos are found in North America and Romania, so the best place for them is the Savage Coast. For fun, make them immune to the red curse for some reason, and have them used as pack animals and mounts. what with Cimarron being the Republic of Texas and all. Giant horses might roam the wilds of Ethengar or Etrugan, where they're considered sacred animals. The creatures can be a quest objective. The Belucatherium was the largest land mammal to walk the earth. If Emperor Thincall or a Prince of Glantry got wind of such a creature, you can be certain that there would be gold waiting for anyone that could bring back a creature alive. Irindi's Safari Island might want an entire group of megafauna for a tourist attraction. You're going to need some rangers and some druids, assuming the druids don't get upset that you're grabbing creatures for a zoo, an arena, or a dissection table. Of course, your biggest problem is getting the largest land creature ever on a ship and keeping it alive. With few exceptions, most of these creatures are herbivores. That's going to be a lot of plants to take with you. Unless you're playing in a region where they're plentiful, you need to keep their actual abilities and appearances a mystery to the players until they actually meet one. Give descriptions from locals that make sense to them but confuse the players. Leave out important parts that the locals don't consider vital, like how a hell pig is 3 times the size of a regular pig. The locals are used to the hell pig. It's always been that size. They know it's huge, but it never dawns on them that the characters aren't used to pigs that can look them eye to eye. You can use the less dangerous ones as set dressing to let the players know that they're entering in a region that's going to be filled with unusual sights. Sloths aren't exactly a menacing creature. Sloths that can clean a second-story window aren't going to be attacking people randomly, but the sight of one casually pulling down large tree branches to eat the leaves lets the party know that they're not in Ostland anymore. Megafauna are a fantastic way to suddenly make a region more unfamiliar to the players without having to resort to magic. They're just animals after all, just huge ones with extra bits bolted on. One issue game masters who aren't familiar with the world building resort to is make everything magical. Magic is supposed to be fantastic. Outside the regions obsessed with it, magic tends to be rare and misunderstood. The same applies to monsters. A Catopolis doesn't need to be found in every dank swamp when a Platybelodon can serve the same role and not disrupt the ecology. Trying to balance a realistic ecology with a fantasy setting can be tricky, but megafauna help bridge the gap without turning everything into stone. Joining our list for next week as a possible topic is the food and drink of Mystara. A bit mundane, but multiple people have asked for it. Feel free to vote for the older options if you like. Remember to like and subscribe, as I've got my eye on 5,000 subscribers now. Not as big as some channels, but I do prefer quality over quantity. But until next week, remember it's not the size of the Belucatherium in the fight that counts, but the size of the fight in the Belucatherium. And you can fit a lot of fight into a Belucatherium.